All right. Well, first, we just want to say welcome to Maria. We are so excited to see you this morning or afternoon for you, this morning for us. And you were telling us about all the rain and it looks beautiful and sunny. So just happy to have you on the podcast today.
And thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
All right. So we always like to start off with just learning a little bit more about you personally and professionally. So can you share a little bit about your background?
Well, as you can tell, I don't sound British because I'm not, which confuses people quite a lot because I've been here in the UK for 25 years,
Oh,
if you can
wow.
believe it. I'm originally from Florida. Well, actually, originally from Chile, born in Chile,
Oh,
but raised in the United States, went to college in the United States, go Gators, University of Florida.
Right.
And then I sort of started to travel the world, and I ended up here in the UK 25 years ago, and I haven't looked back. The accent doesn't go. People automatically assume that I just arrived and asked me, "How do I like it?" And I think, my gosh, I'm probably more British than you are. I'm a British citizen, and but anyway, but so that's my background. I and probably you're going to ask me next about supply chain because I fell into it like a lot of people I think in my
Mhm.
generation fell into supply chain. My first job out of college, I decided, I don't know, for all my sins, to go and explore and travel, and I landed back in Chile where I my grandparents were. And I didn't speak much Spanish, to be fair. I wasn't very good at that. And I just got this job at a winery. And it was a large scale, a very big winery of the region. And it doesn't exist anymore. And I was doing import export slash operations, which is code for everything whether it's welcoming the trucks in the yard to ordering and procuring corks and bottles to handling the bills of lading and the truckloads, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was, and I still tell people it's probably the best job I've ever had. I was in my early 20s, and it was really exciting to learn about all the things in the world of supply chain.
Mhm.
Um, I then ended up here in the UK after many years, and I've worked in more the commercial side of supply chain. So I've built businesses, I've sold businesses, I've failed spectacularly at business, which has been my greatest teacher. And I spend most of my days talking to people in supply chain, particularly around transformation.
Mm.
I love my job now because I get to meet great, exciting people and talk about transformation in supply chain.
Okay, so could you share with our listeners who maybe don't know you yet, how would you describe what you do day to day?
Well, you know what? I say that I am an accidental influencer. I didn't seek out to
Ah!
do that. Not many women my age, Gen Xers, 50 plus, just on this, closer to the 50. And I decided to start talking about the conversations I'd been having for a while.
Mm.
So I run events, micro events, I publish, I write, and I have conversations around supply chain transformation with large scale multinationals. So I'd been having so many great conversations about what at the time was digital transformation
Yeah.
that I then turned that into a podcast. I thought, wouldn't it be great if people could be like a fly on the wall, listening to me talk to chief supply chain officers, EVPs of supply chain, who, you know what, you think they'd have their stuff all together? They don't. And so the podcast is now 220 plus episodes strong.
oh, that's
I
amazing.
then I then started to be pretty vocal in on social media, on LinkedIn, around leadership, around women in supply chain, around technology, around everything that came to mind. And so I now have 40,000 plus followers there on LinkedIn, and I just say whatever's on my mind, pretty much.
I really appreciate it. I think it's refreshing, your candor, and I learned something new, whether it's through one of your interviews or just one of your articles that you publish on leadership. So I really appreciate it.
And
And we'll
Thank
make sure
you.
all of your stuff linked in our show notes so people can follow you if they don't already.
And I think Katie and I can connect with, like with the podcast. I don't think we saw ourselves as influencers,
Yeah.
which we've discovered we are in some way, in a small way, and we aspire to be where you are. But it is because we joke about some of the social media stuff, like what people like, really watch for and listen for and wanna get to know you as a
Mm.
person, and, yeah, for us, we're like, this is so far out of our comfort sometimes, but it's great to see what you're doing as well, Maria.
Well, you know what? It's cringy. Let me tell you, when I first got started, I
Thank
would
you.
cringe at the thought, who in the world is going to want to hear me talk about leadership or challenges I've had
Yeah.
or, you know, things? Do I really need to do this? And I had at the time a really, really young employee. So I'm talking about when I got started doing this on social media, it was probably about maybe, gosh, I want to say about 10 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
So, and I thought nobody wants to hear me say this. And he would say, "You're just going to have to do it. You're just going to have to be uncomfortable because someone will learn from this."
Yeah.
And if I hadn't listened to that really young Gen Zer who was telling me to just put it all out there on social media, because I, you know, including just, you know, promoting all the stuff around my podcast, I wouldn't be doing it. And I really despised it at first. I really felt very much uncomfortable outside of my comfort zone. I had imposter syndrome. I was like, nobody wants to hear from me. Why would they want to hear from me? And then eventually I realized after meeting people at events, I go to conferences and events, people want to take pictures with me. But what resonates more is when someone says, you know, that post you did, Maria, about XYZ, I that spoke to me. It was me
Mhm.
you were talking to. And I thought, oh, well, I guess it is helping people. So I might as well
Yeah.
keep going.
Oh, I love that.
Love it.
Okay, so Maria, you have a very bold statistic in your bio that 90% of business planning transformation fails, which is staggering. So, given the billions of dollars invested in this, annually, if you had to diagnose like patient zero of the failures, is it the technology? Is it the culture? Or people just refusing to adopt it? Like, what would you say would be kind of the root of that?
Well, look, the safe answer is to say it's about all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Generally, transformation fails because people are not ready for the technology. They don't have solid processes. But I think the root really comes down to people are trying to solve something that doesn't need to be solved. They're not asking the question, which is, what am I trying to do here? You know, what am I trying to improve with this transformation? I think there's a lot of transformation that happens for the sake of transformation. You know, people say, you know, the following the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses. I have to implement AI. I have to implement automation. I have to transform my business model completely without questioning, is this transformation going to improve the lives of my clients, my customers? Is this going to improve the lives of my partners, my business partners, my employees? Or am I just putting something in for the sake of it? And so I think we need to ask the question, first of all, what am I trying to solve here? And then, am I also trying to reinvent the wheel? So I had this conversation yesterday with someone about transformation. And I think we're at the stage where people just want a fast or trying to build a faster horse without thinking about, maybe I should invent a car. You know, maybe I should invent a
Mm.
train.
Yeah.
And so they're just taking a supply chain process or
Yeah.
something that exists, and I just want to make it faster. I just want to make it better. I just want to speed it up without asking, is this something I need to change? You know, is this something that maybe I need to think it through completely? We live in a very different world right now.
Mm.
So maybe it's time to think, is this really what I'm trying to do? Do I, you know, have I trained my people to do this? Come on, you've been here. I'm sure I know I've been here where the people above me say, hey, here's this new technology, use it because now you have to do this. And you think, it's such a pain in my backside to do this. I'm still going to use my old system. I'm still going to use Excel because they don't understand my world.
Mhm.
And it's actually complicated things for me. So I think there's all of these things like we're speaking different languages.
I think that's really insightful because I do it's with positive intent. They get excited, they see something, but yeah, if you're not really involving the people who are gonna have to deliver the outcome, and I think maybe starting with what's the outcome we're trying to deliver first,
Mhm.
um, yeah, you can miss the plot.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
think and I think that's when you do get,
yeah.
you know, adoption issues. Of course, people
Mhm.
have adoption issues if you're just going to change things for the sake of change. You have issues that are fundamental, like, for example, remuneration issues. And that's a conversation that doesn't happen a lot in transformation.
Mm,
You can't change behaviors and expect people to adopt new behaviors when the remuneration is based on old behaviors.
yeah.
So you need to look at the entire end to end process and think, is this going to improve things? How do I want to reward people for the behaviors I now want them to implement? And is this technology just for technology's sake, or is this really going to solve the problem?
I
I
do
love
think
it.
it's
Go ahead.
funny, like, how people we will spend, like, millions of dollars on something, and people will still go back to Excel.
Yeah,
They're like, "But I'm not giving up my Excel sheet because I can do manipulate whatever I want," and I
because I
think
get it, I understand it, and
mhm.
that's that. Yeah.
So,
And
okay. Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
and might I add
Yeah.
that this is a problem across big companies, small
Mm,
companies, mid-sized. I mean, I speak to multinational, state-of-the-art companies, and they also have the same problem.
yeah,
Okay. So, with that, kind of going into our next question here is you start something, you pilot it to learn, and maybe it's a really successful pilot. Oftentimes, though, we'll hear, and I think we've also experienced it, like it just gets stuck, like it's in pilot purgatory, and we miss that next step to like how do you scale it? As you're looking at all of these different companies, and I love too that you see large, small, mid-size. You talk a lot about how do you operationalize transformation, and that to me, I think is a skill set or a capability that is missing, and that's what can help you bridge your
mm.
gap from this pilot to scale. What have you seen there that you think could really help these? I don't know, it seems like a really cool pilot project. It worked really well, but we just can't quite get it to scale and deliver the value that we need.
I think there's a lot has to be said for cross-functional collaboration, and not
Mm,
just as a fancy word, really understanding different functions and the value that this transformation may have for the different functions and how to articulate it. I think sometimes we get stuck, whether you're in supply chain or finance or HR, within the confines of our own profession and our
Mm,
own sort of little square box, right? And so I think you need to find the champions that will help you get these transformations off the ground, whether they are within your own function or outside of the function, and then really know how to articulate the benefit and the value of this transformation to others.
mm. Yeah, that's a very good reminder for sure, and
yeah, it's easy to miss it at the beginning too, because you get so focused on your area that you're trying to
mhm.
fix that you can miss the opportunity across. Yeah.
And so, Maria, you also talk about syncing tech, people, and processes. We hear this a lot. So when you come into a boardroom to fix, like as Katie's like a stalled transformation, where do you start and which of those pillars is usually the most neglected?
Well, the people one is the most neglected,
Mm,
followed then by the process. Again, going back to what I said, is this the right process? Is this just is technology trying to make me have a faster process? But is the process still suitable? Is the process still the kind of process that we need to implement? Are the people being trained and to think beyond the process times two? Is it about the outcome? And so I start with the outcome. What is the outcome that you want to achieve first? And then I go into, okay, and what processes need to happen to make that happen? What people do what do people need to know to then fulfill this process? I end with technology. Technology is the last piece of the
Yeah.
puzzle.
mhm,
And I think too many times the fixation is on just the technology. Is the technology broken? And is my data a problem? I think first let's start with the why. Let's start with the what outcome we're trying to achieve, then look at the processes that fit that, and then see if the people can adapt to those processes. And then we look at whether the technology can fit.
How is that received as you come in? Because it seems like,
Kind of
duh.
obvious?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. How is that received? Is it just because like, they need somebody coming in with, like, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh perspective? How do you
I think
broach that? Yeah.
Well, I think an outside perspective always helps, and I'm not the only
mhm,
one that does this. A lot of
Yeah.
companies will do this. You need to unpick the knot, right?
mm,
And I think a lot of times, I look at, for instance, I like to compare it. I look at the weight loss industry.
mm,
Billions, trillions of dollars go into the weight loss industry. Yet it's pretty simple. Eat less and exercise more. I mean, obviously there's complexity and obviously
Yes.
there's
Yep.
exceptions, but
yeah,
broadly speaking, academically, logically, what you need to do to lose weight.
mhm,
Don't eat as many potato chips and I'm simplifying it, of course.
But no one wants to do that,
Uh,
Maria. That's too hard.
but exactly, but we don't do it because it doesn't feel good, because it's not convenient, and those are the human factors that are having an impact on that. So when sometimes the answer is the simplest thing. The simplest thing is,
Yeah.
okay, let's stop what we're doing right now and analyze why we're doing it. And I think sometimes technology acquisitions or transformations take a life of their own, and
Mm,
people are too afraid in the room to say, "What? Let's stop. I know we've decided to invest, you know, all this money into this, but maybe we need to stop for a second and ask, is this the right outcome?" Because here is what's changed, I think, over the last, I don't know, if I look back to my early career, when I think back to supply chain, we talked about VUCA, right? All the time 10
yeah,
years ago. Man, I wish we had that VUCA. Back in the day, I'll take that volatility compared to this volatility. This is an unprecedented level of volatility,
Mhm, mhm,
coupled with an unprecedented level of technological change, economic change, social and
mm,
geopolitical change happening daily,
yeah,
daily, hourly. And
mhm.
so that kind of change means that you can't think in the same way about things. You can't say, I'm going to take on this new project and expect it to take 10 years, because you don't know what tomorrow looks like, let
yeah.
alone 10 years.
Yeah.
So you constantly to be second guessing and checking and double checking. Are we still doing this for the right decision?
And
I think that's so important because for some of these bigger implementations, they can take a few years. And then by the time you get to the end of the road, so many other things have changed since you started. It's a really good reminder.
so, Maria, I think my question follow-up is, and this is a hypothesis, because sometimes the people work can feel, like, overwhelming in terms of it's gonna take a long time and, like, to your point, the capability of the workforce and like, how do you think about with the speed at which things are changing, with the demographics of the workforce, like, how do you bring people along in a way that by the time they're like, to Katie's point, by the time they've got it, it hasn't evolved so much that then it's like what they have today, and so is it like a mindset? Like, I'm just trying to, because 'cause I'm imagining, and I see it in where I work, where it's like you have these large organizations and trying to move the big ship and move this big group of people that haven't thought this way or learned this way. I mean, I even pushed myself. I was telling Katie I've been doing these like Coursera things on the weekends, like just to get my mind. And I consider myself pretty tech savvy. So I'll just look at the workforce and they're not really excited about it, especially people that are like, I got like 5 more years before I, you know, go do my flowers and not have to worry about this. So how do you get those groups of people motivated to get into this like wheel?
Well, I think it's a tough one when you have changing demographics within your, your workforce. So clearly, generate people that are retiring in 5 years are going to be motivated in a different way than people just jumping into the workforce. And I think you have to understand to manage people differently, and
Mhm.
what are the push and pull levers for each of these people. Um, One of the questions I get asked quite a lot when I'm speaking at events or when I'm speaking to people is, what does the supply chain leader of the future look like?
Mm.
And I go back to about maybe 3, 4 years ago. Everybody was like, "Oh, they're going to need to learn how to code. They're going to need to learn Python. They're going to be tech savvy." And the answer to that is, I don't think so. I think that the supply chain leader of the future is a person who has equal parts um, horizontal sort of critical thinking skills,
Mhm.
people skills, commercial skills, and operational skills. The tech, of course, a deep understanding of technology is necessary, but I don't think you need to be a Python coder. I think what you need to do is develop those soft skills, and that means how to take people with you in certain parts, and whether or not taking them with you is going to be the right commercial and operational decisions. So you need someone to equal parts commercially savvy, operationally savvy, people skilled savvy. Those to me are the skills. So how do you do that? Well, it depends on the situation, but you need to take people with you on this journey.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, Maria, you get to talk to so many different leaders. I mean, your podcast, Transform Talks, you've interviewed over 200 supply chain executives, and it's everyone from like Nike, Amazon, Unilever. What is a common thread as you reflect on all of these conversations? What are they worried about? So, regardless of industry, maybe regardless of company size, what's kind of keeping them up at night? And what are they thinking about is going to be maybe the next big thing they have to go after, or maybe it's a small thing. I don't know.
I think this has changed since I got started. So the
Mm.
pandemic really was a big game changer for everyone. And it showcased a world where, we talked about a black swan event, and then all of a sudden it became like a flock of swans, as I like to call it. It wasn't just one black swan event. We've got a flock of black swans coming at us. So I think the biggest underlying issue is each leader is asking themselves, will I have the agility to ha- be resilient and succeed in times of uncertainty? And so, really, it's about developing their own skills to drive that agility. We're not going to have all the answers. We're not going to be able to, to weather everything. But I think one of the threads that I find in common with all the leaders that I have interviewed, and again, large scale companies, mid sized companies, academics, business gurus, authors, politicians, you name. I've interviewed all sorts of people, and I think the ones that I feel hopeful about are the ones that know that they need to be able and willing to unlearn to move forward.
Ooh,
And I think that's an important trait.
Oh, I love that.
it is. It's a growth mindset. Yeah.
And so, speaking of that, so you're on the HBR Advisory Council and you're a media leader. So you see some of the like hype cycles up close. So, right now we talked about everyone's talking about generative AI, but based on your like behind the scenes or unfiltered conversations with leaders, how much is really being implemented versus kind of theater or like, things that for the board or like what is really real in that?
Well, you asked the $1 million question, or maybe it's the
Mm.
$1 billion question. Everyone's talking about AI. Who's actually using it? I don't see many case studies. Now, I've interviewed people. I interviewed Unilever, who gave me real, actual case studies and you can find that on my website. I also have a video series called Voices in Transformation, where I interviewed the chief supply chain officer, their transformation, and they have X millions of dollars in savings that they've had from the implementation of generative AI. I'll tell you what I think. And I read this amazing article. I think it was Scott Galloway, professor, University, New York, NYU, who said that generative AI is kind of like Ozempic for business.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So I'm ripping it off from him because I love following what he does. But it really resonated with me. I think everyone's using it, and not many people are admitting to using it. So when you don't see the people saying, well, not many people putting their hands up going, yeah, of course I'm on Wegovy, Ozempic, but everybody's losing weight and everybody's going like, hold on a second,
Everyone
something's
get a lot
up
skinnier
here.
these days.
So I think what's going to happen is all of a sudden they're going to be runaway leaders in the
Mhm.
race of performance.
Mm.
And these runaway leaders in the face of performance will have as a secret weapon a lot of technology, a lot of generative AI, that kind of thing. That's why the case studies are few and far between, I think,
Okay, that's gonna ask, like, why be secret about it? Because you would think
because
you'd wa
competitive advantage.
yeah, okay.
That's
That's
what that's what I think. I mean, it's just a
yeah,
guess.
hmm,
That's such an interesting take 'cause I agree. I feel like the flip has been like everybody's talking about AI, and is it really delivering the value? And maybe the ones that are like kind of quietly behind the scenes, just doing
mhm,
the work, you would keep that as a competitive
mhm,
Why
advantage.
wouldn't you? I mean, it just sounds
Yeah.
obvious to me that I would keep that as my competitive advantage. Yes, I think that there will be leaders using generative AI in a way that is quite innovative, and I think those stories will come out eventually. I think right now there's loads of studies that say that generative AI isn't yielding the kind of return on
Right.
investment. There's lots of articles about that, and maybe that's the case, but I think it's still early days.
Yeah.
I really do.
All right. So, sort of with this, if you think about current supply chain leaders and future supply chain leaders, right? I do think we can often be these quiet operators in the background, just, get the cases out the door. Do you think like the modern it could be a chief supply chain officer or any kind of supply chain executive, should be more public facing and like be more of a storyteller than maybe what we've seen in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, categorically. I think that supply chain leaders proved during the pandemic that we were able to step up and keep the world running. That
Mm,
is a reality, and I don't think we get enough credit, nor do we shout about it enough. I think strong supply chains kept the world moving during the pandemic,
yeah.
and I think strong supply chains are the key differentiator with successful businesses. Uh,
Yes.
and so we have every right to be shouting from the rooftops. We are keeping this business going, and so I think it's a mistake. It would be a squandered opportunity if what we were able to demonstrate during the pandemic doesn't allow us to become more vocal and open and aim for the CEO roles of businesses.
Mm.
And I think just because for so long supply chain leaders have operated in the dark, behind the scenes, in a warehouse somewhere, keeping business going, doesn't mean we should return there. Again, I tell the story that uh, before the pandemic, I struggled to explain to my neighbors what I did. If
Yeah.
I met someone and they asked me, "What do you do?" I'd be like, "Oh man, this is going to be tough," and no one's going to get it anyway. Now, when I say supply chain, the majority of people, especially during the pandemic and the years afterwards, people right away were like, "Oh yes," and I haven't been able to buy my car because of this, or my car's in, whatever,
They
or
wanted to
how
tell
come
you all their
supermarket?
stories
They
about whatever
wanted
it
to tell.
was.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think we should. This profession doesn't do a good enough job, I think, of really shouting from the rooftops and being extremely vocal about the contribution that we make to business. A strong business has a strong supply chain. So, to answer your question, Katie, I really think that the supply chain leader of tomorrow is someone who is very vocal as to their contribution to the value proposition of the business.
I love that, Maria. I also think it can be inspiring for younger people that we need to be joining like our workforce. You
Absolutely.
can have such a positive impact on your community and like the globe
Well,
by joining supply chain. Yeah.
I like to say that if you want to change the world, join supply chain. If
Yes.
you,
Yes.
if you want to, for example, deal with sustainability, or you're passionate about climate change, join supply chain.
Yep.
Supply chains are the biggest polluters out there, so
Yep.
join supply
That's
chains
so
to
Yep.
true.
fix it.
Yeah,
To fix
I
it.
love that.
You want to change. I don't know. You want to change business. Join supply chains.
Yep.
We're at an inflection point in business right now where we need to redesign businesses for the modern age, and that means businesses that have been built on economies from World War II and the 90s, NAFTA, et cetera, are being changed and
Yep.
rewritten. So we're having to redesign supply chains right now. If you want to be at the forefront of innovation and technology and
Yes.
technological change,
Yep.
join supply chain. So
Yep.
really, I think supply chains have the opportunity to change the world, and I believe that we need to attract top talent to it.
I love that. That is one of my mantras because I do truly believe supply chains can change the world. So love that.
So, Maria, you talked about there's the academic supply chain, like the theory. There's people that are really good at that, and then there's the real world that we live every day, and like the chaos that is supply chain today. So, how do you bridge the gap to ensure the content that is being produced actually serves the people, like on the factory floor, like the people that are using it? Because I know Katie, we all hear we go to plant sometimes. They're like, what you guys are talking about up here, like that is not, especially when transformations, like that does not connect and trickle down. So how do you think about that?
Well, it's some of my episodes are strategic and high level and are speaking to senior people about the different types of strategies they're implementing. But I think you also need to bring people in the room about the tactical, to talk the tactical and
Yeah.
Yeah.
understand what's actually going to work. And you need to push back. I mean, I have been in interviews where someone tells me something and I go, well, that's not going to work. And I say that to them and I think, well, how is that supposed to work for the person down the line? How is that? I remember speaking to someone who was talking about optimizing their procurement processes. And I thought, well, that's great. You've optimized it and saved X amount of money. But by buying the cheaper goods, you're actually buying more. And that means you're creating a problem for the warehousing people and creating a
Mm,
problem for the manufacturing people. Have you thought that through? Who's running this?
Yeah.
You ask those tough questions. And I think because my background is also being a CEO, I look at supply chain through the lens of commerciality and business
mm,
and value. And so I'm able to push back on some of those things. I'm also sick and tired of having the same conversations I was having 20 odd years ago about transforming and creating the end to end supply chain. Why are we still talking about this? What's the blockage? What's stopping us from doing that? And a lot of times, again, to the earlier conversation, are people. I sit in rooms where I ask people, well, why aren't you transforming? And you get really excited people that say, Maria, I would love to transform, but my CFO has said no to extra spending, or my so and so has said no to this. And then I usually throw it back and say, well, how are you pitching this idea? How are you talking
Mm.
to them about this? To my point about cross functional collaboration and getting outside of your comfort zone and being able to storytell success and value. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. We sort of just buy into the hype of I'm going to
mm,
transform and fail to understand how is that going to benefit the whole business. So to your point of how do you actually affect the people in the shop floor, I think it's by asking the people up top the tough questions.
mm,
One of the things that you said that a few times there that has stuck with me is value. I
mm,
think
thank you.
sometimes people focus immediately on, like, cost savings, and you do have to look at the hard dollars,
Mm,
but if you're a business leader, you're looking at the total value, and, that does resonate then with what you talked about, like, the cross-functional collaboration. Because if you're bringing in finance, manufacturing, procurement, like, all the partners there, and really look at, just like you said before, like, yeah, you bought this cheaper part, but it created all these other issues. Like, you didn't create value then for that business, really. And
I
so
think
that's such a
agree.
good look at it. Yeah.
I think we get sucked into talking about costs because it is a big issue. It is a big
Yep.
thing that we're, especially with an economy the way that it is
Yep.
today, and with things being so fragile, right? You don't want to add costs, but at the same time, I think we're not having enough conversations around value and risk.
mm,
And I think sometimes, for instance, I feel like the CFO is usually misunderstood. I interviewed a CFO and I said, "All right," I said, "You're Mr. No. How do you get over being Mr. No? You're everyone thinks you're Mr. No, they don't walk into your office, they know they're gonna get a no. And the reality is we don't understand what keeps the CFO awake at night. And a lot
mm.
of times it isn't just cost. It's how do you deliver value in the business? How do you keep risk at bay? And sometimes that may mean more investment and more money. But if it's going to bring value and it's going to minimize risk, that's a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
One of the, I think, key takeaways as you were talking, and I talked to my team about this, I think to really be a good supply chain leader partner is that commercial knowledge and collaboration, because what I tell my team is, like, we should not always be yes people. Like, we should be asking the question of, like, should we be even doing this? Like, is this product or whatever, like, are we what is the margin on it? What, like, because we usually see the full end-to-end impact that other people don't see.
Correct.
And I think if you don't have those relationships and that commercial knowledge, and we should be asking, like, what are the sales on this and what's giving us, because it's like I'm going to be the one pitching this to the capital or whatever's going to required investment to get this done. And it's like we should be as believing in the commercial, product or whatever it is as the commercial team and others.
Absolutely.
And I don't think we have that mindset all the time either.
Well,
So
and it's a secret weapon because if you're able to harness the commercial and operational, then that is a CEO in the making. That
yeah.
is really
Yeah.
the best combination.
Mm, I love that.
All right,
Okay.
Maria, we like to close it out with a couple of advice questions. So, specifically, one of the ones we had for you is you have this incredible network, right? Like, you can call on people in academia, business, government. Sometimes networking is like this dreaded word. Like, you can actually see people like clench up when we talk about networking. What is some really tactical advice, something really practical that people can use, that could build their network that feels more than just like a list of people on LinkedIn, but like a community that you could actually call on?
I think there's two things. One is start small. Reach out to people that you like that are within your group, peer group, within your. Just start with the easy. Don't necessarily do the hard bit. Start with the easy. That's one. Go to something local. Go to a mixer with someone within your own peer group, and I think that's an important thing. Put yourself out there and go to conferences. Sometimes I go to a lot of conferences. I could show you a handful of lanyards that I've got. I mean, it's like I have to hold it with two hands just from last year. Uh, and um, and I think sometimes I would say that the best conversations or the best value, again, there's that word that I've derived from an event has been just sitting next to someone when I was having a cup of coffee
Yeah.
and having a conversation with someone, and that has been a lifelong connection that I can tap into someone that's a like-minded person that helps me validate ideas and helps me innovate. And just that one connection made it all worthwhile. So
Yeah.
I think just do it, go. And then the last thing is don't be afraid to go big either. So I've had people, students, like reach out to me and send me a LinkedIn that starts with, look, I know you're probably never going to see this, and they're probably right. It takes me ages. It may not be in the because you can imagine with so many connections, so many people. I don't go through my inbox that often, but when I do, I think, well, hey, this is brave for this person to reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring in 5 minutes and see how I can help them, and maybe that will lead to something. So I think start small. Don't hesitate putting yourself out there, and don't be afraid of going big too.
Love it.
But Katie, when we first started, we were kind of nervous to reach out to people. Now we've lost it. We're like, we don't care. We're just gonna ask. The worst they can say is no. We're like,
Worst they can say is no. The worst they
we're
can
like,
do is
It's
not.
true.
Yeah, exactly.
and
Is
not
Yep.
is it
respond.
was it,
We're like, hey, you want to come on? Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
thank you. I think that's a good reminder. And okay, so last question. So your podcast promises unfiltered opinions, and often transformation does require kind of hard conversation. And I think as women in general, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts about just how we're like just our personalities as children, and it comes through, I think, as adults, we're socialized to be, collaborative peacekeepers kind of go along. And how do you advise, women coming up, like, how do you get comfortable being a disruptor, not just going along? Like, what would be your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, and I had this conversation. I've led a lot of women in business groups, women in supply chain groups. I speak to a lot of women, young and older, and I think, I think there's, eh, it's tough. It's tough because generally we're more of the silent type. In general. I mean, you get obviously different people that are more outspoken, but I think if you don't feel comfortable being disruptive in a meeting and putting your hand up and saying, I'm going to go for it, then find a champion outside of the meeting to help you get your ideas out. Don't eat your ideas and never let
Mhm.
them out. You need to do this in a way that's comfortable for you. If you're not comfortable with putting your hand up in a big room with full of people, don't do that. Reach out to your leader separately and say, hey, listen, I had this idea. What do you think of this? Or reach out to a manager or reach out to someone and say, what about this idea? But just sitting on your ideas is not going to get you far. So you'd be surprised about the fact that I come across women with enormously powerful resumes that have imposter syndrome. So this understanding that this affects everyone. It
Mm.
isn't just you, because you don't have the experience. I speak with women that I have to remind them to go read their resumes when they say to me, Maria, I just don't think people are going to listen to me. And I go, do me a favor, pull up your resume. You see that? You are amazing. Oh my gosh, stop. And so I think it's important to know that it happens to all of us. So just even if start small, don't put your hand up in the big room, but go talk to someone.
I love that. Don't eat your ideas. They've got to get out.
Don't
Mm,
eat your ideas.
mhm. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
Maria, this has been. Oh, go ahead. Do you want
I
more
know, I was
question
just
for
saying the
me?
same thing. We're always like, we're like, this is
This has been amazing, Maria. Seriously, thank you so much. We were so excited when we reached out to you and you said yes.
I
So like I
know we
said, we've been
were.
trying.
Katie was like, Maria said yes. And like,
I
you'll see us like
appreciate
on
it.
your LinkedIn. We were like, look at all your stuff. We were so excited.
Well, I appreciate you guys, being here up and early just to accommodate me. So thank you so much for this.
This has been
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you.